Hey guys, FilthyRobot here. Trying something a little bit new with this video. We're gonna do a first reaction, or kind of a brief reaction video to a game. Not so much my like, not that kind of bullshit, but more along the lines of my brief take on a game that I got a little bit involved in, but not super heavily involved in. So let's talk about Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2, the sequel to, you never guess, Battlefleet Gothic Armada 1. It's basically a RTS slash campaign map, very similar to Total War series, I think is what the similarity boils down to, where your fights are in real time, but then your campaign management, map mode, etc. is in turn-based mode. I thought it was overall an excellent addition to my gaming library. Really enjoyed the experience of that. I liked the Warhammer 40k universe, the grimdark stuff, and they were pretty good about not being too silly with it, where some developers go that route, so treating it fairly seriously in terms of the ambiance for that. It did a great job of feeling like you were a small force securing sectors and showing the vastness of space between the various systems and sectors. You take over a lot of terrain in this world, in this game. We're starting from small and expanding outwards with fleet production facilities, managing multiple fleets at a time. So it felt like you were commanding a war as opposed to fighting a battle. And I think a lot of RTSs, you feel like you're fighting the battle. You're all the moment-to-moment management, but the bigger picture doesn't really matter in a lot of RTSs, and it did not feel that way in Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. It felt like the bigger picture mattered a lot. You were out. The issue with your fleets being able to get to the locations they needed to defend in time based on their movement was relevant. The number of fleets you had versus the strength of the fleets was relevant. The admirals commanding them were relevant. The resource production across your systems every single turn were relevant. The production capacity of your shipyards were relevant. I really liked what they did with the campaign. I didn't like the campaign in the first one, so I thought this was a massive improvement on the campaign. Okay, so those were the really good things. And then the other good things of this game are you're fighting, it is unfortunately 2D battles in space, which seems a bit crazy. I mean, not the graphics being 2D, but you're actually fighting on a plane with ships. But that said, you still get to fight with giant Gothic fortresses that do things like broadsiding. Broadsiding in a navy as a thing in a game is awesome. It's so damn cool to have a ship plop down, like fly in between two enemy ships, shooting out just volley after volley of essentially cannon fire out of either side of that ship for the duration of the battle as you're broadsiding someone. I love directional weapons in games. I love the idea that, you know, I have heavy armor in the front and I drive towards them as fast as I can. Then when I get close to them, slow down and start broadsiding on either way because that's how my ship performs. That's such a super cool thing. Torpedoes are super cool. Skill shots with like large volleys of torpedoes is like another great thing about this game. I love the way the combat looks in this game, and I loved the campaign element of this game. Individual combats, not bad. Not the best, not bad. The AI becomes a little predictable and a little repetitive. And the AI tends not to be super smart for this. They're not terrible, but they're not great. So some of the stuff that becomes, some of the strategies used to beat them become very repetitive, and there are a lot of fights. The campaign is fairly long. I don't remember how many hours I put into it. I didn't end up finishing it just because I do it on stream, and stream lost interest in watching this much of a campaign. I think if I had played it on my own, just on my own time, I probably would have eventually finished the campaign, and I may still go back and do that. But the fights do get a little repetitive. I'm going to start talking about some of the negative things, the things I found critical about this. Sometimes it felt a little bit like whack-a-mole. There were system movement paths in this game where you move from one system to another through very specific points. It feels like it's a game where you could build choke points, but a lot of the way the enemies attack you are not through these choke points. Some of the stuff is. Some of the stuff it requires the enemies to follow the rules of kind of the way the space lanes are laid out in this game. But then some of the attacks are kind of like, they call them invasion fleets, where they show up from off the map and are showing up in a specific system, sometimes like one of your core systems that's massively protected by like 10 jumps in either way, but suddenly they're attacking there. And I found that a bit annoying. It felt a bit like whack-a-mole. It's like, oh, today I have 12 invasions and 6 of them are in my core systems from nowhere, and I have to move fleets to that. A little bit repetitive, as I said. The individual fights are pretty good. They add a lot of terrain stuff like solar flares and gas clouds and storms and exploding like space creatures and all this stuff that adds some diversity to the fights, and I like the addition of a capture point mode as well as a destroy all the enemy ships mode. These are clearly ways that the game developers are attending to make the fighting different. And as you progress, you do unlock different ship sizes, and your admirals can command more troops and more ships, so that the fight size changed. And I like that too. I thought that was a pretty good experience overall. So I did like those, but the fights did get a little bit repetitive. I found some of the restrictions, the artificial restrictions, a little bit annoying. I didn't like how you couldn't transfer ships from one fleet to another fleet, which meant that because of the way they unlock fleet size and fleet strength, that meant there was you were restricted on how creative you could be with your fleet compositions, because you're forced to build these fleets in real time in response to the threats around you, and then, which is fine. I like that. I like that as a game mechanic. There's a little bit of kind of a sense of you had lots of options, but not many of them mattered, which I didn't like as well. Not always, but particularly for upgrading the worlds. As you take a system over, the system has points of interest. Those points of interest are individually upgradable. In large part, you want to upgrade almost all of these all the time. You have the resources to do that. So that kind of decision doesn't seem very meaningful if the answer is yes, you should always upgrade when you can upgrade. Maybe there's a timing element to that, but it didn't seem that relevant. And then some of the points like the agro worlds, the agricultural worlds just don't actually seem worth upgrading ever, from the way when you start looking at how long it takes for them to repay themselves. So there's a little bit of a sense of some of my options were options, but they were only options in the sense that it gives you a false sense of player agency, because the impact of your options are fairly negligible. Didn't like that very much. I did like the multiple factions. What was it? It's Orcs, Necrons, Tyranids, Chaos, and Space Marines, or rather Imperial, all to begin with sub-factions in those. And those were all in the base game with the base campaign, which I liked. And there are 3 campaigns, an Imperial campaign, a Necron campaign, and I don't remember the third one right now. Maybe, I think it was a Tyranid campaign. I did like those as starting things. There was a fair diversity. The ships felt different. They played different. They looked different. They had different ambiance and atmosphere to them. I liked that. Although when I started looking into the other fleets besides the main campaign, they weren't quite as fleshed out as the Imperial side of that. But I did like that. I thought that diversity was fairly nice. Balance, I'm not so sure about. I did play a little bit of multiplayer. I think I played 2 days of multiplayer. Matched up in some 2v2s, didn't really get into the 1v1 this time around. The multiplayer was improved over the multiplayer Battlefleet Gothic Armada 1. There's no persistent fleets, which was a huge stupid thing, although you still have to unlock some of the abilities, which means that as a new player you do go in at a handicap relative to some of the players who have been playing for a while. I did like the increased fleet sizes available in multiplayer, which means you can have more diverse setups with deeper tactical options available to you. You can build a ranged fleet, you can build a brawling fleet, blah blah blah, right? You can do these types of things. That was fairly cool. I like the escort versus line ship breakdown. I like the ship sizes, but the multiplayer still has suffered some issues with lag, still suffered some issues from, I thought, like balancing stuff. There didn't seem to be as wide a variety of strategies available as I would have liked. It felt like to me, not the ones that worked. Now granted, I didn't play all that much for it, so perhaps my understanding that was a little bit limited, but these were my kind of first impressions of it. So I was a little bit worried about the balance of that. So my total take home from this game was really fun. I had a blast with it. Did get a little bit repetitive. I wouldn't be able to play it forever, but you don't have to buy a game to be playing it forever. You just had a ton of hours for the campaign. The campaign was fun, engaging, and I thought very, very well done, I thought, for a campaign. I don't generally love a lot of single player campaigns, although there were some flaws in it that I would really like addressed. They patched it in I think I played it about a week, 2 weeks, something like that. In the course of playing that, I think there were 2 patches that went through while that was happening, and both of them were fairly good patches that had meaningful impact on some of the complaints I was having. In other words, it felt like the system was still being improved. And overall, I would strongly recommend this game. If you liked Battlefleet Gothic Armada 1 at all, this was a vastly superior game to that, with a lot of the things I liked about the first one being done better in the second one. I do want to know what you guys think of this type of review, this type of video. Please let me know in the comments below your reaction to this, if this is something you would find helpful or not, or if this is something you'd enjoy watching or not, because I would like to do this. This is one of the things of being a variety streamer, is I end up checking out a lot of different game titles, and it feels like I might not be able to give you a super in-depth review of something that I've only played for a reasonable amount of time, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours, something like that. But I at least can give you my first reactions to that, and you guys can use that to inform some of your decisions. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this was fun, and hopefully the editing in the background was kind of cool added to this. When I recorded this, I'm recording this on a blank black screen. So all the gameplay footage that's been added has been from my editor. So give him a cool shout out for doing this cool work. And thanks very much for watching, guys. See you soon.